Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're unpacking a case that is, well, it's truly bizarre. It involves a pizza delivery man, a bank robbery, and, incredibly, a collar bomb.
It really is one of those stories that sounds like fiction, a really complex web of events, almost like a twisted scavenger hunt gone horribly wrong.
Exactly. And the sources you share, we're going to unpack them together, try to understand the key players, the key events, and just figure out what happened.
Sounds good. It's
Yeah.
a lot to unravel.
Okay, so let's start with Brian Wells. This is in Erie, Pennsylvania, back in 2003. Brian's a pizza delivery guy for Mamma Mia's Pizza. Been doing it for, 30 years?
Yeah, a long time. And the sources describe him as, friendly, maybe a bit naive, gentle, lived pretty quietly, had cats, liked movies, concerts.
And puzzles, apparently, like the kind you find in newspapers, maybe scavenger hunts even.
And that detail, his coworkers apparently thought he was maybe easily taken advantage of. That seems pretty important later on.
Right, sadly prophetic. So, August 28th, 2003. It's around 1:30 in the afternoon. Mamma Mia's gets a call.
For 2 pizzas. Seems normal enough.
But the delivery address,
Ah,
Peach Street, specific address, but it turns out it's not a house.
no, it's an empty lot. Just a few miles from the pizza shop, but still. Odd. Near a TV station tower, down a dirt road. Not your typical pizza delivery spot.
Definitely not. The call itself. Police traced it back to a payphone.
At a Shell gas station nearby. So, yeah. Strange location, strange call origin. Red flags, looking back now.
Absolutely. But then things take this incredibly sharp, terrifying turn. Less than an hour later, about 2:28 p.m., Brian Wells isn't delivering pizza. He walks into a PNC bank.
Not in Erie, though. In Pittsburgh, which is quite a drive from Erie.
That's a huge detail, a significant drive. He's wearing a white t-shirt, says guess on it. Pretty normal. But he's got something bulky under the shirt around his neck,
Yeah.
and he's carrying a cane.
A walking cane, and that thing under his shirt, it's a metal collar. A bomb collar.
Unbelievable. And despite this, he walks in, waits in line, apparently very calmly, even grabs a lollipop.
Which is just chilling. The calm exterior. When he gets to the teller, he slides over a note.
And the note demands $250,000, $250,000
Yeah.
from the vault. And gives him 15 minutes.
15 minutes. And it explicitly threatens that the collar bomb will detonate if they're slow or don't cooperate.
The teller responds, look, we can't get that much money from the vault in 15 minutes. It needs multiple keys, different people.
Yeah.
It's just not possible that fast.
Right. So instead, she gives him what she has in the drawer. About $8,743.
He takes the cash, and then he just walks out. Slowly. Sources say almost like a Charlie Chaplin walk, doesn't run.
But the bank had already alerted the police, obviously, so they intercepted Brian's car very quickly, just nearby.
Brian gets out, hands up, and immediately tells the officers about the bomb. It's gonna go off, he says.
They make him sit down right there on the pavement. An officer cautiously checks, confirms. Yeah, it's a real device. Looks complex. Horrifyingly real.
So the police back off, take cover behind their cars. They're trying to talk to him, keep him calm.
And Brian's pleading with them. He's saying, I'm a victim here. He tells them this story about being jumped by a group of black men, that they forced the collar on him, made him rob the bank.
Yeah, he said they gave him a 20-minute deadline or it would blow. He's asking the police, call my boss. Help me get this thing off.
They called the bomb squad, of course. But there were delays. Road closures in the area, completely unrelated, slowed them down.
And while everyone's waiting, holding their breath, the collar starts beeping.
Oh, God. You can just imagine the sheer terror.
Brian's getting more and more agitated. The beeping gets faster, louder.
Yeah.
And then it detonates.
It explodes, throws his body back onto the pavement. Police checked. He was alive for maybe a few seconds, but died right there, before the ambulance could even get there.
And the bomb squad. They arrived just 2 minutes later.
2 minutes too late. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
So immediately, the police are grappling with this huge question. Was Brian Wells a criminal who messed up his own plan, or was he a victim? The fact it was a real sophisticated bomb that leaned heavily towards victim at first.
And the initial search of his car started turning up some really strange pieces. That walking cane he carried into the bank,
Yeah.
it was a gun. A functional, homemade gun.
Okay, wow. And the bomb itself.
Experts examined it. Incredibly complex, professionally made. It even had decoy wires, specifically designed to confuse bomb technicians, make them waste time. That level of craftsmanship stood out.
There was more in the car, right? The notes.
Some multiple handwritten notes, not just a man's, but outlining this elaborate scavenger hunt, step-by-step instructions. Mentioned PNC Bank, the $250,000, told him how to survive by cooperating, but also warned him he'd die if he didn't follow every step immediately.
A deadly game.
Yeah.
So police went back to that delivery spot, the empty lot on Peach Street.
Found Brian's tire tracks, confirming he was there, and multiple other footprints. Looked like there might have been a struggle.
And they tried to follow the scavenger hunt clues from the notes.
Right. The first step after the lot was a McDonald's sign nearby. Look under a rock by the flower bed for the next note. That note sent him south on Peach Street to a yellow traffic sign near some woods. He was supposed to go into the woods, find a glass bottle with another note inside.
But he never got that far, did he? Wow. The police stopped him near that yellow sign.
Exactly. He was intercepted before he could get the next clue. But the police searched those woods and they found the glass bottle.
And the note inside.
It told him to go further south onto I-79 near the Edinburgh exit and look for another clue in the woods there.
So police went to that spot too.
Yeah. They searched those woods, found some orange tape marked Vietnam, strangely, but no further note or clue.
But they saw something else there, right?
They did. A blue minivan parked nearby. As soon as the officers made eye contact with whoever was inside, the van just sped off. Police immediately suspected that van belonged to whoever set this whole thing up.
Okay, so the investigation is widening. Brian's autopsy. It's grim. The explosion caused massive trauma. And removing the collar for examination required decapitation. Just awful.
They searched his house, but didn't find much directly related to the crime itself. Personal stuff. But they did find a notebook.
What was in it?
Names of prostitutes he apparently frequented.
Okay, so that led them down a couple of paths initially.
Yeah, they checked out one prostitute he knew who had an ex-boyfriend, military background, maybe bomb skills. Ruled out. Looked into a rivalry involving the pizza shop owner. Also ruled out.
But then, just 3 days after Brian died, something else happened. His coworker from Mamma Mia's, Bob Rothstein.
He was found dead, at home, drug overdose, high levels of methadone.
And the timing was incredibly suspicious.
Extremely, because Bob Rothstein was scheduled to be interviewed by police about Brian Wells the very next Monday. So the question became, tragic overdose, or was he silenced before he could talk?
So at this early point, police are juggling a few theories.
Right. Theory 1, Brian's the lone wolf. Built the bomb himself, it went wrong. But the bomb's complexity made that seem unlikely.
Theory 2, Brian's telling the truth. Pure victim, kidnapped by this group he mentioned, forced into it.
And Theory 3, sparked by Bob Rothstein's death. Were Brian and Bob in it together somehow? And Bob killed himself out of guilt or fear before the police interview.
Meanwhile, the analysis of the bomb collar itself keeps coming back. Complex, professional, those decoy wires.
It really helped build a profile of the bomber. Someone smart, skilled with mechanics, maybe weapons, and definitely controlling, manipulative.
And they also realized, looking at the scavenger hunt timeline laid out in the notes,
that 20-minute deadline Brian mentioned, it was basically impossible. Following all those steps, getting the money, you couldn't do it in 20 minutes.
which led to a really chilling thought.
Yeah, that maybe Brian was never meant to survive. Maybe he was intended to die from the start.
And just when you think this case can't get any stranger, about 3 weeks after Brian's death, police get another call from a guy named Bill Rothstein.
Different Rothstein, no known relation to Bob at this point, though the name is, well, it's a coincidence.
A huge coincidence. What's Bill calling about?
He's reporting a body in a freezer at his house.
A body in a freezer. Okay. And where does Bill Rothstein live?
8645 Peach Street.
Wait, the same Peach Street as the empty lot delivery?
The very same. Incredibly close, in fact. The body in the freezer, it was a man named Jim Roden.
And who is Jim Roden?
He was the husband, or maybe ex-husband, of a woman named Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong. And Bill claimed Marjorie killed Jim and asked him, Bill, to hide the body in the freezer.
Why did Bill finally call the police?
He said Marjorie asked him to get a meat grinder to dispose of the body. Bill apparently told police that was beyond the line for him.
Wow. Okay, so this brings Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong onto the stage. And she has quite a background, according to the sources.
Oh, absolutely. Highly intelligent, top student in high school, multiple college degrees, social science education, talented musician, too.
But also, significant mental health issues reported. She apparently self-diagnosed as bipolar. Therapist diagnosed her with that, plus other things. Tangential speech, narcissistic traits, personality disorder, had trouble with relationships, prone to anxiety.
And her relationship history, it's dark, multiple marriages. Some husbands died under let's say, mysterious circumstances. First husband, head injury from a fall. She sued the hospital, won a lot of money.
And apparently kept his femur bone for potential cloning.
That's what the sources say. Just bizarre. Another ex died mysteriously after they broke up.
And she'd been arrested before, right? Back in '84.
Yes, suspected in the murder of a boyfriend, Robert Thomas. Claimed self-defense in court. And now, here she is, arrested again, this time suspected of murdering Jim Roden.
So what's the connection between her and Bill Rothstein, the guy with the freezer?
They were former lovers, dated years ago, almost got engaged. Bill described them as kindred spirits. They remained close.
And Bill? What's his story?
Came from money, family had a bottled water business, didn't go to college, helped with the business. Seen as smart, strategic. Marjorie also shared some intimate details about him with police, preferences, fetishes. Seems irrelevant, but it shows their odd closeness, maybe.
Bill was questioned about Jim Roden's murder. Passed a polygraph on that specifically. But he had a secret.
Right. He had a roommate living with him, a guy named Floyd Stockton. And Floyd was a fugitive, wanted for rape in another state.
And when did Floyd move out?
The day after the Brian Wells robbery. Very suspicious timing.
Police eventually tracked Floyd down.
Interviewed him. He denied knowing anything about Roden's murder or the Wells case. Passed polygraphs on those points, apparently. He was sent back to face the rape charges.
Okay, so back to Marjorie. January 2004, she's on trial for killing Jim Roden.
And Bill Rothstein testifies against her. Says the motive was money, a financial dispute.
Bill gets a lighter sentence for helping hide the body because he cooperated, right?
Yeah, just a few years for concealing a corpse, things like that.
But during her trial, Marjorie starts making claims.
Big claims. She says Bill killed Roden. And not only that, she claims Bill Rothstein was the mastermind behind the whole PNC bank robbery, the collar bomb, everything. Said he manipulated Brian Wells.
But nobody believed her at the time.
No, it sounded like desperate finger-pointing from someone trying to save herself.
And then, before police could really dig into Bill's potential connection to the Wells case,
he dies. July 2004. Complications from lymphoma. Pneumonia, blood clots, just gone.
So only after Bill Rothstein is dead do police start seriously reconsidering Marjorie's claims about him and the Wells case.
Exactly. And several things suddenly look different in hindsight. First, that note found at Bill's house when he died. Some called it a suicide note, but it specifically said his death was not related to the Brian Wells case.
Which is weird, right? Why even bring up Brian Wells if you're not involved?
Precisely. Then there's a blue minivan. Bill owned one. Matched the description of the van seen fleeing the woods near the scavenger hunt clue.
And Bill's profile. Intelligent, good with his hands, maybe controlling.
Fit the bomber profile police had developed quite well.
And the location. His house? 8645 Peach Street. Super close to the delivery lot and the payphone where the pizza order came from.
All these geographical links suddenly made Bill look like a much stronger suspect posthumously.
Okay, so while police are looking back at Bill, Marjorie is in prison for the Roden murder, serving her sentence, but she wants out.
Right. She starts writing to the police again, offers information on other cold cases, mentions this guy, Ken Barnes, a drug dealer she knew from fishing. Cocaine Ken? Police weren't biting initially.
But then she dangles the big one.
Yeah, she explicitly offers info on the Brian Wells case. Says she knows who did it.
And around this time, police dig into Marjorie's own history with that specific PNC bank branch.
And they find a potential motive for her. Seems her father, whom she had a bad relationship with, was allowed access to her safety deposit box there years ago. It contained her mother's inheritance, and she'd given specific instructions not to let him in.
So, revenge against the bank. A possible motive for Marjorie herself to target that branch?
It looked like a plausible motive, yes. So police make a deal, transfer Marjorie to a prison closer to Erie, and she tells them what she knows about the robbery.
And what does she tell them?
She doubles down. Bill Rothstein planned it all. Built the bomb, wrote the notes, forced Brian, owned the blue minivan. She lays it all on Bill.
And investigators find physical evidence in Bill's house that seems to back part it up.
Right, those scratches on his desk. They matched unique arrow markings found on the actual scavenger hunt notes given to Brian. Pretty strong evidence that Bill wrote the notes.
So police are now pretty convinced Bill wrote the notes, probably built the bomb. But Marjorie...
She still denies her role, blames Bill for everything, claims she wasn't involved in the robbery itself at all.
But then, more witnesses start coming forward. Summer of 2005.
A professor, Robert Pinarski, says he saw Marjorie driving near the PNC bank on the day of the robbery. Made eye contact, described it as unsettling.
And another witness.
placed Marjorie at the Shell payphone on the day the pizza order was made. So now Marjorie's being put at key locations on key dates by independent witnesses.
Police are feeling more and more certain she wasn't just involved, she was likely running the show.
And then they get a huge break from inside prison. An inmate who was locked up with Marjorie comes forward.
What does she say?
Said Marjorie confessed details of the robbery plot to her. Crucially, she mentioned names Marjorie wouldn't have known unless she was involved, like Floyd Stockton and Ken Barnes.
Cocaine can.
The same. This inmate's testimony was credible because of those specific details, and it led investigators to look harder at Ken Barnes and his connection to Brian Wells.
Through the prostitute, right, Jessica Hoopsick.
Exactly. Jessica was one of the prostitutes Brian frequented. Ken Barnes was her drug dealer. The connection was direct. Brian would drive Jessica to Ken's messy house, pay her, they'd have sex, and she'd immediately buy cocaine from Ken with Brian's money.
So police lean on Ken Barnes.
And he cracks. He confesses.
And what's his story?
He reveals Marjorie's motive. She was furious about her father getting into her safety deposit box at PNC. She wanted her father dead to get the rest of his inheritance. And she planned to hire Ken to do the killing.
But she needed money to pay him.
$250,000. The exact amount demanded in the bank robbery. The robbery was planned specifically to fund the hit on her father.
Wow. So Ken says Marjorie planned the robbery.
Absolutely. Said she roped in Bill Rothstein, himself, Ken, Floyd Stockton, maybe others. But Marjorie was the planner, the one in control.
Okay, but Ken's confession adds another layer to the Brian Wells question. Victim or accomplice?
This is huge. Ken Barnes claimed Brian Wells knew about the robbery plan beforehand. Said Brian even attended a planning meeting.
So Brian's story about the black group kidnapping him
might have been a lie, a cover story fed to him by Marjorie in case he got caught. That's what police started thinking.
Maybe Brian thought the bomb collar was fake, just a prop for the robbery.
That became a strong theory. That he agreed to participate, maybe reluctantly, thinking it was a fake bomb, and only realized the horrifying truth when it was locked around his neck and ticking.
Ken Barnes described the actual day, August 28th.
Said Marjorie told him, "It's robbery day." Ken asked about Jim Roden. Marjorie said he was homesick. But Roden was already dead by then, killed by Marjorie.
So Ken, Marjorie, and Bill go to the Shell station, make the pizza order call.
They wait at Bill's house nearby. When Brian shows up at the empty lot, Floyd Stockton is there with a collar bomb. Floyd puts it on Brian.
And Brian's reaction?
Panic. He tried to run, according to Ken. Ken tackled him, punched him, said, "Just do it." Then Bill Rothstein fired a gun as a warning shot.
So Brian was physically forced at that point.
Seems like it. He reluctantly agreed. Bill gave him the scavenger hunt notes, the cane gun. Marjorie told him to use the black group story if caught, and that the cane gun was usable.
Then they all split up. Brian heads to the bank.
And Ken and Marjorie act as lookouts, drive to the bank, watch through binoculars. Ken even claimed they were sort of joking and laughing in the car after Brian came out.
Chilling.
Yeah.
They sped off when police arrived, almost hitting the witness, Penarski.
Ken also claimed Jim Roden was supposed to be involved in the robbery initially, but he backed out. And that's why Marjorie killed him before the robbery happened.
Okay, so Ken's confession paints a detailed picture. But they needed Floyd Stockton's confirmation too.
Right. They finally got him to talk in prison, March 2007, almost 3.5 years later. And Floyd confessed his part. Specifically, putting the collar on Brian. Said Brian looked scared. Floyd expressed guilt.
So the main players are finally clear. Marjorie, the mastermind, planner, motive against PNC, Roden's killer.
Bill, the co-planner, bomb maker, note writer, minivan owner.
Ken, participant, helped subdue Brian. Look out.
Floyd, participant, the one who physically put the bomb on Brian.
But Brian's role, still debated for a bit, until Jessica Hoopsick talked again.
Yes. Jessica, the prostitute, eventually gave police the final piece. She admitted Marjorie and Bill hired her to find someone gullible, someone easily manipulated to be the bomb hostage.
And she chose Brian.
She chose Brian because he was kind to her and she knew he could be taken advantage of. She said they paid her $5,000. She expressed immense guilt, insisting Brian was a victim, not a willing participant.
She even mentioned her son might be Brian's.
Yeah, adding another layer of tragedy, though it wasn't confirmed. But her testimony really solidified the conclusion for investigators.
That Brian Wells was ultimately a victim. Lured, manipulated, coerced, and murdered as part of this incredibly twisted plot.
Absolutely.
So July 2007, charges are filed against Marjorie and Ken Barnes. Bank robbery using explosive.
Marjorie's trial was long, complex. October 2010, she's found guilty on all counts related to the plot, conspiracy, use of the device resulting in death.
February 2011, she gets her sentence.
Life in prison plus another 30 years.
Ken Barnes.
Also got prison time. Sources say he actually adapted well, got clean from drugs, preferred the structure of prison.
And Floyd Stockton.
Never charged specifically for the Wells case. Finished his sentence for the earlier rape charge, got married, was reportedly living in D.C.
And Marjorie maintained her innocence.
To the very end, kept blaming Bill Rothstein. She died in prison, breast cancer, April 2017.
And with that, this incredibly bizarre, tragic case was officially closed.
What a story. It's just layers upon layers of manipulation, greed, mental illness, and ultimately pure evil, leading to the horrific death of Brian Wells.
It really makes you pause and think about, I don't know, the hidden darkness people are capable of, the intricate ways they can manipulate others, and just the sheer awful randomness of fate that put Brian Wells in their path.
A truly disturbing case, and a reminder that sometimes the most shocking stories are the real ones.
Well, thank you for walking through all those complex details with us. It's a lot to process.
It really is. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found this exploration valuable. Until next time.